friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network. I'm Robbie Young, Vice President of Strategic Growth at CUInsight, and it's my job on this show to have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community. In this episode, we'll identify issues affecting credit unions and have a discussion on best practices so that we can all gain a few nuggets and we can learn something to improve our credit unions. My guest on today's show is Jaime Marks, Director of Recruiting Services at Humanidei. Jaime, thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, Robbie, what a pleasure and an honor to be with you today.
So we're going to jump right in. I know that most of us didn't grow up thinking that we were going to work in credit unions. What did you grow up thinking you were going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't really have modeling at home when I was younger to get into college or university. And so I started working when I was 15 years old because I wanted to be independent, right? And earn that money so I could buy my first car and the gas that goes in it and the insurance to protect it. So after a few years of working part-time jobs, I thought it would be really cool to get a job, my first professional job, working for the credit union where my parents opened up my first bank account. And that was Ent Credit Union. And so that started my passion and love affair with serving community members with financial products and services to meet their financial needs.
Now, Jaime, I know that we are a lot alike, but that alone told me a lot more about why we're a lot alike. So can you talk a little bit more about your journey to your current role as Director of Recruiting Services at Humanidei?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, piggybacking on the last question. So I started my financial services career at Ent, was there for a few years and kind of made the craziest, most bold move of my life and left my home state of Colorado after 20 years, moved out to California, which looking back, I still can't believe I did that, but it was the best move I've ever made personally. Jumped into a commercial community bank. It was the only financial institution where I could find a job and ended up loving it. I mean, I've gotten some of the best leadership at that bank and grew tremendous amount. So I was there for 11 years, was headhunted back to a credit union and have worked at 3 other credit unions since that commercial bank. What led me to Humanidei ultimately was really, I saw the job posting 2 years ago. And having followed Jill Nowacki for a few years, I've been very inspired by the work she does and the company that she built. And so when I saw the opening for this role, I certainly didn't think that I was going to get it. It was a nationwide search, obviously, but knowing some of the leadership lessons that I've learned working for those different institutions, I've seen some of the best in leadership, and I quite honestly have seen some of the worst with executives at the top. So getting this role here has allowed me to really affect change in culture within every credit union that I work with to place executives. And for that, I am extremely passionate about all of it.
That's so great, Jaime. I've heard nothing but good things about your work at Humanidei. So I'm not surprised to hear that you got lured back over to this side of things. So could you tell me a little bit more about where and how Humanidei adds value to credit unions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to say my day job is executive recruiting. And so that's where I spend a great deal of my time working specifically with credit unions to find the next best talent for their organizations. The other areas that I really, really get passionate about are things like leadership development. And so for me, it's never been transactional the way I conduct business, either here at Humanidei or before or in the future. For me, it's all about relationships. And so when we place executives, I always like to think about the nuts and bolts of how that leadership team is going to align align, how they will play together in the sandbox, so to speak, how their relationship will be with the board of directors. And again, drawing on those moments of wisdom in the financial institutions that I've worked for, I just want greatness in credit unions today. So we focus heavily on leadership development through things like executive coaching, team coaching and development. We have programs like Humanidei that prepares tomorrow's next leaders to get into that next CEO seat. So the leadership development piece at Humanidei is also huge. And I spend more and more time today in that place as well. Those are a couple of areas that we spend a lot of our time here.
As a recent addition to cohort 2 of Humanidei, I can say it's a lot of fun for sure.
That's fantastic. I enjoy seeing all the pictures of you guys.
So in recruiting for leadership roles within credit unions, it's clear that it's not just about finding candidates with the right technical skills and business savvy, but also those who can connect with people, inspire teams, navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. How do you assess a candidate's alignment with a credit union, with the credit union's movement, especially when it comes to balancing strong business acumen with value-driven leadership?
That's probably the most important question that we can ask ourselves when we journey down the road of executive recruitment. So I'll maybe say it a third time. The examples that I've worked under in credit unions, witnessing and knowing what that feels like when you have stellar leadership at the top, everybody's working in alignment. I've actually felt how good that feels when that occurs. I've also felt what it feels like when things are not aligned at the top and when you have really poor examples of leadership at the top. And so at the time working in those spaces, I didn't see it as a gift, but man, looking back and reflecting now, those are true gifts that I was given because now working in this space of executive recruitment, anyone can look at a resume. Anyone can look at the technical acumen of a chief information officer candidate leading technology, IT, cybersecurity at a credit union. What I'm looking for is, I hate to be so random about it, but how high on the nice human being scale can that person be? And really, I need that to happen before I can tell the credit union that they have all of the technical acumen that I can check the boxes to fulfill. If they can't be a nice human being and play nice in that sandbox, they're probably not going to get past my desk and my interview. And I only know that through intuition, again, seeing the best and some of the poorest examples of leadership.
That's amazing. And I think such an important piece of this conversation, especially in this current employment environment. What does values-aligned leadership look like in practice within credit unions?
When we launch a search, I spend a lot of time, as do the rest of our team. We spend a lot of time with the leaders in the credit union, the hiring teams, certainly a board of directors if we're hiring for a CEO level role. And so oftentimes, a lot of that initial conversation is really talking about what are the values of the credit union? What traits does that new leader need to come in with to best align with your credit union? And so it's really identified early on. And again, through our screening process, through the interview process with me, I can very quickly tell if a candidate is going to align in the best way possible with the credit union that I'm working for.
Shifting gears a little bit from building the strong teams through strategic recruiting that we've been talking about, could we lean into a little bit more that piece that I know you know so well and are a strong proponent of, which is the leadership development? In your experience, what's the most effective strategies for fostering ongoing leadership development within credit unions, both for individuals and teams? But why is it so critically important for ongoing success?
So, I've seen really great examples of credit unions, and I'm talking about, I know we always like to think about, well, how big is the credit union that you're referring to? And sometimes size matters, but sometimes size does not matter. And I've seen this particular example in credit unions that are $7 billion in assets all the way down to a $350 million credit union. The credit unions I'm speaking of really care deeply about that ongoing leadership development. And they do it through the work of executive coaches. That really, if you think about, an executive team sitting around a boardroom table, that executive coach is kind of arm in arm with that whole team. And so I've seen ongoing executive coaching, and then you mix in the entire team, leadership development with the entire team and a coach. And it really takes some of that heavy lift off of certainly a CEO and puts it onto this third party person who only wants the best for the organization. And I've seen great things come out of that. I've seen relationships become stronger amongst that leadership team. And I'll tell you, Robbie, it's the old adage, it starts from the top down. And so the stronger your leadership team is, the stronger the whole organization is going to be.
That's such an important reminder. So, given your passion for advancing women in leadership roles within the credit union industry, what do you see is the biggest barriers to women's advancement? And how can organizations work to create more opportunities, visibility, and support for women at all levels?
I can't ignore the fact that women have a lot of things to balance in life. And that looks different for every woman. But all of the invisible work that we do as women while balancing our careers, it's a heavy lift. And so I think that's one of the biggest barriers that I have seen working in the space for, over 20 years. And I think the organizations, the credit unions that offer more balance to their employees are winning the talent game. I work with some credit unions and they still have that mindset of, everybody in the office 5 days a week, very structured in that way. And that's fine if it works for that credit union. But I see those credit unions that have more of a balance offering to their teams and all the way up to their executives, more balance, more flexible work, more hybrid work. They're winning the talent game big time. So I think offering solutions that will help women feel more supported at work so that they can accomplish everything that's on their plate and not just the work that they have in front of them at work, recognizing them as a whole human being, I think makes all the difference.
Well, I'm sure if we could hear our listeners, there was probably a bunch of women that just went, oh, someone sees me.
Right. I do. I see you all.
So as we look into the future, what is Humanity's focus on the road ahead?
So I think all things talent, culture, leadership development, I see us really wanting to make sure that given all of the changes that are happening in the industry right now, I mean, look, again, I worked for a commercial bank for 11 years. And in those 11 years, I think I saw and witnessed 5 mergers at that one bank. So we were always we were the purchaser, always acquiring new banks to grow our asset size. And so now, 20 years later, I see the credit union industry almost mirroring what the banks have been doing for a long, long time. My fear is that what is that doing to the individual cultures within the credit union space? The word culture was, I think, the number one word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary in 2014. But here we are in 2025, and the word culture could not be more important. So I think the way humanity wants to play, and certainly the way I envision it, is how are we going to support the industry and those organizations who truly want to keep their culture intact and grow it as they grow, whether that's through mergers and acquisitions, organic growth, whatever that looks like. But how can we be a support to the industry in that way?
That's so important. And your journey really, really shines an interesting light on that. So as we wrap up the show, we like to have some fun with some rapid fire questions to really let our listeners get to know you better. The questions are rapid, but your answers certainly don't have to be. Do you think you're ready?
I'll be as ready as ever.
So, who is someone in your life that was a great leader and what makes them great?
Oh, wow. So I think of a few people. I'll take it back to my first professional job at Ent Credit Union. Matt Gendron, he's their chief engagement officer. He's still a mentor to me after all these years. I still ping him every once in a while to get direction and, hey, Matt, what do you think about this? So it's Matt Gendron. I think about Iris Swisher. She was a leader to me when I worked for that commercial bank. I was lucky enough to mentor under her for about 10 months. And I still to this day whisper to myself, what would Iris do when I'm up against, a big decision? And I think about leaders like Barb Kroll. She's the chief experience officer at Orange County's credit union. She's been a great mentor to me and someone I look up to greatly. So there's a lot of people out there that I look to as great mentors.
That's amazing. And I think it really does speak to how many great leaders we meet within our careers and how impactful they all are in different ways.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to splurge on something and you really want to treat yourself, what's one thing you might invest in a little bit?
Oh, wow. So shamefully, I'll say I've got enough Burberry purses in the closet. So what used to be fun and exciting to go out and get a new purse, today it's more like I've got this sort of this secret obsession, and actually it's a side hustle of mine. I do some home organization, sort of boutique style for people on occasion, side hustle project. So if you ask me, like, what's one thing that I splurge on, I love to find those really beautiful home pieces, whether it's baskets or organization gadgets or tools that I can make spaces pretty in a home. I love nothing more than to splurge on that. And I'll be honest, Sur La Table in Williams-Sonoma gets a fair amount of my income from time to time. I love cooking, and so they get my business from time to time.
Well, I just made a note for my next splurge to be for you organizing my house that desperately needs it. So, a random question. We know you'd get to travel a lot for work. What city are you most excited to visit, whether it's going to see a client or going to a conference?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. So I lived for a few years in Santa Barbara, California. And I always say that after I moved there and moved down the coast to San Diego, I left my heart in Santa Barbara. And so if I ever get a chance to visit there, I probably would say Santa Barbara, California.
Noted. We'll let the other cities know that not to have their feelings hurt. So what is one book that you think everyone should read?
Oh, that's a good one. So one that sticks out clearly from many others that I have, and as a girl who used to run track and field in her high school days, the book Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. And actually that is his name, Rich Roll. He's the author. And the thing I love about it, and there's so many nuggets of wisdom that I've taken from that book that I use in everyday life, but he talks about his transition from sort of a middle-aged, overweight guy to an ultra endurance athlete. Very inspiring story. Side note, he's got a really great podcast that I have in most days. So that would be the book that stands out for me.
That's very interesting that you say that. We had our very own John Pettit on our last episode, and he also mentioned a ultra running book.
Oh, okay. There's a theme here.
He's not a runner though, but he said it really showed you how you could change your way of thinking to do the hard things.
Yeah, it's that runner's high. I think it's a real thing. So
what is your best hack for creating balance and integration between your work life and your life?
So my answer might be a little outside of specific hacks for balance, but I would say it's always important to start with foundational things. And so if you don't work for a leader who doesn't respect and appreciate work-life balance, it's really hard to have work-life balance. And I say that because I still have some PTSD from credit unions who had that hustle and grind mentality. And I remember those days where I got 5 hours of sleep and a ton of work, and it was a lot. So I feel blessed. One of the things that I love about working for Humanidei, and don't get me wrong, we work incredibly hard and long hours, but our leader, Jill Nowacki, really, really understands and allows her employees time for balance. So that would be my advice. And the best hack that I know is that I had to kiss a lot of frogs before I got to her in the way that she respects and appreciates work-life balance. And you need that in a leader.
Every time I hear that PTSD from that kind of mentality, all I can think of is, thanks a lot, Gary V.
Right. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So we'll be sure to link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. But my last question for you would be, do you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think the last thing that I want to leave and really share, again, I talked about where I started, and that was Ent Credit Union. And I'm sure everybody listening to this will know because it's all over the news. But, they announced a merger with Wings Credit Union. And so by the time that's finished, there'll be excess of $20 billion in assets as an organization. And so getting back to the conversation about all the changes that are happening in our industry, the mergers, the consolidations, my thought and what I want to leave everyone with is, don't forget the reason why we started credit unions and we started in this industry. Our motto is people helping people, and that should be lived inside the walls of our organizations just as much as we live it outside with our members. So don't forget why we started and why it's so important today.
Well, thank you so much, Jaime. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Stay well, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in today to the CUInsight Network. We'll see you again next time.